Most food safety failures happen not because people didn't care. They happen because no one was truly allowed to decide. Welcome to Module 7. Today we are going to explore the governance, ownership, and leadership, and who actually protects the consumer. Now, through Module 7, where we cover governance, ownership, and leadership, we are going to replace hope with authority because most food safety systems rely on hope. The hope that someone will make the right decision when pressure arrives. Module 7 teaches you to replace hope with structure. You will learn who truly owns food safety decisions, how to build authority that survive financial pressure, and how to create governance that work when it costs money. This is about power and not about policy. All right? Module 7 is presented to you by Walball, founder of QHSE 360.org. Our target audience, let's have a highlight before we dive in. We designed our course to cover primary production and manufacturer, and that means it is designed for farmers and primary producers, for food and ingredient manufacturers, for multinational food companies, and small processors. Also, our course is designed for distribution and service sector, including cold storage and logistics providers. It's designed for importers and for exporters. It's designed for retailers and supermarkets, for food, service, and catering chains. And also, we design our course to serve professional specialists, including food safety managers and quality assurance team, interested internal and third-party auditors, and food safety consultants and technical specialists. And also, we have this design. Let me just reduce a little bit. Yep, we have designed our course to serve the governance and oversight that include regulatory professionals, NGO and public health officials, supply chain and risk managers, and also for senior leadership teams. Let's dive in. Now, our design principle for our course, we made it in a way that every module must make sense both at a small farm and a global corporation because we speak a universal language of food safety. Let's start here. It is 3:47 a.m. and your phone rings. All right? The night shift supervisor is on the line. Metal detector just flagged contamination in 2000 units ready to ship at 6 a.m. Your biggest customer is waiting. Production manager say, we can hand sort and ship on time. Quality manager says, we need to investigate the source first. The operational director says, missing this shipment costs 50,000 USD and risks losing the account. Now you have 15 minutes to decide. Who has the final word here? And more importantly, who should have the final word here? This is governance, not the organization chart on your wall and not policy in your manual. This moment right here, this scenario, when money, pressure, and safety collide. The common assumptions, the phrase that sounds good but means nothing is the following phrase: food safety is everyone's responsibility. You have seen this in mission statements. Maybe it's in your world right now that food safety is everyone's responsibility. Here's what actually happened. Let's take example of a small farm in Kenya when food safety is everyone's responsibility. We'll go through multiple examples. First, a small farms in Kenya. Farmer notices unusual discoloration on produce, tells the packhouse supervisor, and supervisor says, "We are behind schedule. It is probably fine." Farmer doesn't push back. He is not the food safety person. Another example, a factory in Thailand. Line worker sees temperature gauge reading high, mentions to shift leader, and the shift leader says, "Maintenance checked it last week. Keep running." Worker shrugs, "Not their call." Another example here is for distribution center in Germany. Warehouse operator finds a pallet that sat in the sun for 3 hours and asks the logistics manager. The logistics manager says, "Temperature inside the boxes should be fine." And operators loads it anyway. Now, these are three continents, the same problem. When everyone is responsible, no one is accountable. The person who sees the risk doesn't have the authority, and the person with authority doesn't see the risk. Here's the problem with shared responsibility. Let's explore two different things and don't confuse these two different things, all right? First, you have participation. Participation can be shared. That means everyone reports hazard they see, and everyone follows procedures, everyone maintains hygiene, everyone stops work if they see immediate danger, and everyone contributes to safety culture. That's participation, and it can be shared. Then you have accountability. Accountability cannot be shared. Accountability is who decides if product ships or doesn't, who has authority to stop production, who owns the consequence if it goes wrong, who cannot be overruled when safety is at stake, and who faces regulatory actions when system fails. This is accountability, and it cannot be shared. The test here that you should do, if five people in your organization can say, "Not my decision," you don't have accountability. You have a gap where risk lives. This test, you can run it anytime, randomly. Ask five people and see what happens. Now, what governance really is, here is what governance actually look like and what it doesn't look like. First of all, most people think governance is having a food safety policy, that governance is organizational chat with a quality manager, or has a plan that passed audit, or documented procedure. You can have all of these and still have zero governance. And the real governance is demonstrated through the following. The first scenario: production manager walks into quality office at 4 p.m. Friday. Major customer orders needs to ship tonight. One batch is 30 minutes short of the validated cooling time. And the production manager asks the quality manager, can we ship it? It's close enough. And we will lose the account if we don't ship it tonight. In weak governance, the quality managers will call their boss, and the boss calls operation director, and they will conduct a conference call, and they will make a business decision, and they will ship the product to not lose the account. They will compromise there. But the real governance, this is what will happen. Quality manager will say, no, validation requires 4 hours, and we ship on Monday. And that's the end of the conversation right there. In scenario 2, supplier delivers raw material. Certificate looks fine, but the truck temperature log shows a 2 hours deviation. And also the production is waiting. Certificate look fine, and the truck temperature log shows 2 hours deviation during the shipping of the product. Production now is waiting for the product. Now, in weak governance, they will say, let's use it this time and talk to the supplier afterward to correct this mistake next time. But in real governance, the material is rejected at receiving, and the production will be adjusted. The scheduled production will be adjusted. The difference here, in real governance, the person with food safety authority can say no, and it is sticks. No escalation, no negotiation, and no business decision override. If safety decisions require permission, you have hierarchy, not governance. All right? If safety decisions in your organizations require permission, you have hierarchy. You don't have governance. Now, the real governance pairs under pressure. Governance is invisible until this tested. And definitely everything looks good when things are going well. When audit is passed and the procedures are followed, the leadership seems strong, everything is going fine. Then, when the pressure arrives, here's what actually happened and what looked like when the pressure happened. Real example: seafood process in Vietnam. Okay, seafood processor in Vietnam. Now let's examine the government under pressure in a seafood processor in Vietnam. It's a peak season, and the facility is processing 12 tons per day, but the blast freezer compressor fails at 2 p.m. Repair will take around 8 hours, so the product in process will exceed time temperature limit by 3 hours. Now, the operation manager will say, we cannot lose this product. It is 40% of our weekly revenue. The product still looks good and it smells fine. Let's proceed. But the quality manager will say here that the time temperature abuse create pathogen risk that we cannot see or smell. So we destroy the product. Then when escalated to plant director, the plant director will say to the quality manager, are you absolutely sure about the decision to destroy the product? This will cost us around 15,000 euro. Definitely the quality manager, if needed, will present the evidence, scientific evidence or scientific explanation or expertise explanation and say, yes, I'm sure about my decision. We need to destroy the product. Then the plant director will respond, okay, let's destroy the product. And for operations, get the backup chiller vendor here now. And we'll say to the quality, just make sure the documentation of everything for the customer. Now, that's governance. The quality manager had authority. The plant director backed it even when it hurt. The operations manager didn't get to override the decision of quality manager. Now, 3 months later, a competitor in the same region had similar problems. All right, but they shipped the product anyways. And then the listeria outbreak happened. And that competitor's facility is closed and they went bankrupt. All right, that's how the real governance make a difference. Now the question is, what happened in your facility when this moment, similar moment to what we demonstrated, happened in your facility? What happened there? What decision? Because such moments will definitely come. Equipment failure is something that happened in the operations, and equipment will fail. And suppliers will miss deliveries. And customer demands early shipments will happen. And seasonal window will close. So what happened in such situations? Your governance structure is only real if it survives these moments. All right? Now let's look at the structural problem. The structural trap most organizations fall into. Here is the common structure that looks reasonable but doesn't work. Is that there is a CEO on top, and under the CEO you have operations director, and under this operational director you have production manager, and under production manager you have quality manager. And quality manager is reported to the operations manager or operations director. So this is the visual of that hierarchy. On top, you have the CEO who provides overall strategic direction and the leadership for the company. And under the CEO, you have operations director who manages day-to-day activities and operational efficiency. And under the operations director, you have production manager who oversees the manufacturing process and production targets. And under production manager, and sometimes in parallel with production manager, you have quality manager who ensures products meet the required standard and specifications. So what happens? Quality manager sees a contamination, for instance, and wants to hold the production. But production manager, who is their boss or their indirect boss or the boss's peer, say, no, we need to ship. All right, we need to ship the product. Now, here the quality manager in such hierarchy will have the following options. The quality manager can escalate to operations director who owns both production target and quality, or the quality manager can back down, or can fight and risk their job? This is not a people problem. This is a structural problem. Let's demonstrate with real example here the structural problem with dairy facility in Brazil. Quality manager reported to plant manager, found temperature deviation in pasteurization, and wanted to reprocess. But the plant manager said, we are already behind, and the deviation was only 8 minutes. Let it go. Quality manager documented their objective and let it go. Now, 6 weeks later, customer complaints hit the company, and regulatory inspection was right there. That's a non-compliance, and facility suspended for 3 weeks. All right. Now, who get the blame in this situation? Of course, quality manager for not stopping the shipment. You see? Now, who had the power to stop it was a plant manager who said, let it go. The structure made failure inevitable. All right. Now let's look at the better structure here. In better structure, you have CEO on top, and under CEO, you have operational director who oversees production and logistics and maintenance. And in parallel, okay, also you have quality and food safety director who also report to the CEO who oversee quality, food safety, and compliance. This is the visual here. On top, you have CEO who provides overall leadership and vision. You have quality and food safety who ensures the standards and compliance and report to CEO. And you have operations director also who manages day-to-day production activity, but also reports to CEO. And those both, the operational director and food and safety director, have to collaborate or escalate. Now, both report to the CEO and neither can override the other. The disagreements escalate to someone who owns both outcomes, who is the CEO. Now conduct this test for your organization. Can your quality or food safety leader stop production without asking permission? If not, you have a reporting structure problem here, not a people problem. Now, this is the control test, the 5 questions governance test. And don't look at your organizational chart and don't read your policy. Just answer these questions honestly, okay? First, who can stop production immediately if they see food safety risk in your organization? Name the person. Can they do it without asking permission? And what happened to them if they are wrong? All right. Second question. Last time there was a conflict between production schedule and food safety. Who made the final call? Was it the person with food safety responsibility? Or was it escalated to someone with business targets? The third question, if your quality manager rejected a shipment that would cost $50,000, would they be supported automatically or would they need to justify to operations? Or would they fear their job? Fourth question, when you hire or evaluate your food safety leader, what matters to you more? Their technical knowledge or their ability to work with the business? If the second one, their ability to work with the business, is your answer, then you have hired someone to compromise. The final question, fifth question, is in the last 12 months, how many times has production been stopped for food safety reasons? Zero? If zero, either you are perfect or people are afraid to stop. But if you say multiple times, then that's good because the system are being used. Now, scoring yourself, if you have hesitated on any of these questions, you have a governance gap. And if you answered like it depends on the situation, you don't have governance, you have negotiation. Real governance means the answers are clear, consistent, and don't change based on how much money is at the stake. Right? Module 6 gave you the evidence, and Module 7 gave you the power to use it. Let's recap from Module 6. You learn how to generate objective evidence by monitoring critical control points and by verifications that controls work and through validation that your system is designed correctly. You now have data, temperature logs, pathogen tests, supplier audits, and traceability records. So here is the problem. Let's demonstrate with example poultry processor in Poland. Quality team validates cooking process and establishes critical limits with core temperature of 75 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. All right? Monitoring shows one batch only reach 73 degrees Celsius. All right? Quality manager has the evidence. There is a clear deviation and it has been documented. The 73 degrees Celsius. And we say the critical limit is 75 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. Now the quality manager goes to production manager and says, this batch failed critical limits and we need to rework or destroy this batch because of the temperature deviation that fell below the critical limits of 75 degrees Celsius to 73 degrees Celsius. The production manager responded and says, it is only 2 degrees. That's within measurement error. We are shipping it anyways. That's what the production manager said. And the quality manager responds, our validation says so and so and so and so. You know. Then the production manager say, I will take the responsibility. Ship it. Now, in this scenario, the evidence was perfect, but the governance was broken. In Module 6 taught you to see the risk. Module 7 teach you to act on it. Evidence without authority is just documentation for lawsuit, right? So now, what should have happened, all right? In the same scenario, what should have happened? Let's explore. The quality manager says, this batch failed critical limit. It's on hold. And the production manager says, can we discuss so and so? The quality manager would respond, no, we cannot discuss so and so. It is not a discussion. It is a critical limit and we rework or destroy. The production manager would respond, I need to escalate this right now because you are not discussing with me. Well, the quality manager will say, escalate to the CEO if you want. The batch doesn't move until this is resolved through proper deviation procedure. That's governance. Evidence has teeth. Now, this is where governance breakdown and how to fix it. Governance fail at the interfaces. You remember in previous modules, the system thinkings and the system designs and the 5 patterns that we studied in previous models. Governance fail at the interface where responsibility transfers between people, between departments, or between organizations. That's where the governance fail. Now, let's look at interface one between receiving to production. That's an interface. The gap here, receiving accepted, let's say, accepted a delivery with minor temperature deviation and say, production can decide if they want to use it. That's the gap. So why it fails in this situation? Receiving doesn't want to be blamed for rejecting material, and production doesn't have full information. So the material with the temperature deviation get used. Now, in order to fix this, you must design a system that the receiving must have a clear authority with documented specifications and metrics and procedures. So if the product meets the specs, accept it. If it doesn't meet the specifications, reject it. No gray zone, no negotiation, and no such thing as let production decide. That's how you fix this gap. Let's demonstrate that with real world example. A vegetable processor in Mexico receiving the receiving team found condensation in a refrigerated truck. They called quality instead of production, and quality rejected the load. And then they conducted supplier investigation and found that refrigeration unit was cycling off, and that would have caused a spoilage in 48 hours. All right. Let's look at interface 2 between your facility, co-packer. That's a gap there. The gap here in this uh, interface 2, let's assume you send a specification to co-packer. They manufacture your product and you assume they have followed your HACCP plan. You assume, okay? Now with your assumption, here there is a failure. Why it failed? The co-packer, let's assume, has 15 other clients, which is the most likely scenario with co-packers. They usually work with tens, if not hundreds of clients. So the co-packer has 15 other clients and your product is at 8% of their volume. So they have other 92% with other clients. Now, when they have a deviation during your product manufacturing, they make a business decision without calling you. Now, how to fix this situation? You must contractually, you must state it now specifically that any deviation from your critical limits requires your approval before product ships. This must be in the contract. and you audit their deviation log quarterly, at least quarterly, and you have the right to reject products after production. All these must be stated in the contract, and you follow through. Let's demonstrate that with real example. Sauce manufacturer, a sauce manufacturer in UK, Cole Parker had meter drift, had pH meter drift. All right. Sauce Parker, sauce manufacturer in UK, the Cole Parker had pH meter drift and produced 3 batches below pH at 4.6, which is critical for shelf life stability, and shipped anyway. And then the product is spoiled in distribution, and it costs 200,000 pounds in recall. Now the manufacturer was legally liable even though they didn't make it. They are legally liable, not the co-packer, the manufacturer with the brand name in it. When the product got spoiled because of the co-packer, they were legally liable, and it cost them also 200,000 in recall costs. Now, let's look at interface 3. Your company, between your company to the distributor. That's an interface. Let's see the gap there. Let's say the product leaves your duct in perfect condition. Temperature, monitored, storage, even the transportation. But at the distributor's control, uh, like you kept the product, the distributor kept your product in their warehouse for 3 weeks before they deliver it to the customer. And during that 3 weeks, your product went through temperature abuse in distributor's facility. Now, the customer definitely will blame you, the brand owner. So, why that failure happened without your notice? You didn't have visibility. Distributor also doesn't report problems. You didn't specify that in the contract, and you just assume they have the controls. And you find out when the customer complaints came. How to fix that? You have to put it in distribution agreement to include temperature monitoring requirements. And also you must include that you get access to their temperature log real time. And you audit their cold chain quarterly at least. All right? The contract must specify liability for temperature abuse also. If your product went through temperature abuse there, they must be liable legally and financially. All should be in the distribution agreement. The action steps for your organization: map every point where your product or information transfers to someone else. Okay? And the mapping, we already covered that in previous modules, step by step, how to conduct the mapping and the elements you need and the procedures. Just check the previous modules, they are in our channel. Now, map every point where your product or information transfers to someone else and ask, if something goes wrong here, who has authority to stop it? And will we even know? While you are mapping all the interfaces, ask this question. And that will lead you to the following, to the subsequent steps. Those are your governance gap based on your question, your answers. Follow the money to find the truth. All right? Every organization says food safety is the top priority. Well, here's how to know if that is true, if really food safety is their top priority. First, conduct the budget test. Let's look at company A says food safety is our number one priority. That's what they say in their mission statements and the policies. Food safety is our number one priority. Now, let's test it. Their budget shows the following. The marketing has 2 million budget. Production marketing has $2 million budget. Production equipment upgrade, they allocate $5 million budget. For food safety and quality, they allocated $180,000 with 3 staff and basic equipment and no training budget for food safety and quality. And when quality asked for additional 50,000 USD for rapid pathogen testing system, they say we cannot afford it right now. But when marketing asked for 50,000 USD for trade show booth, they approved it in 48 hours. Now, what's their real priority? Evidently, it's marketing and production. Safety, food safety is number 7 or number 8. It's not that number 1. It's just on a statement. But when you test the budget, you will know. Now, let's look at the company B. Company B says food safety is our number 1 priority. And their budget shows the following. The quality director salary matches operations director. Dedicated food safety training budget is $120,000 yearly. Environmental monitoring budget is $200,000 yearly. And when quality needs emergency equipment, they have pre-approved spending authority of up to $25,000. And quality team can stop production without financial penalty to their department. Now here, who is the real priority? Is actually food safety. Let's conduct authority tests. That was a budget test. Now let's conduct authority tests. Ask your financial team the following, okay? If quality manager stops production for a food safety issue and it costs us around 30,000 USD in lost production, does that cost charge to the quality department's budget? If the answer is yes, quality will hesitate, definitely will hesitate to stop production, and they are being financially punished for doing their job. All right? If the answer is no, then quality can make decisions based on safety, not budget impact. Real example, bakery in Australia, the quality department budget included cost of quality hold. Every time they stopped production, the lost revenue was charged to their department budget. At the end of the year, the quality manager's performance review flagged excessive quality hold costs of $180,000. Guess next year what will happen? Quality holds will drop by 60%. And it's not because the food safety has improved. No, it's because the reporting decreased. Every hold is charged to their budget. So the reporting decreased. Now, the following are the actions for your organization. First, calculate What percentage of total budget goes to the food safety or quality? Secondly, compare. How does that compare to marketing, sales, and operations? Then ask, does quality have authority to spend money in emergencies? And also check, are quality holds counted as quality costs or business costs? The budget reveals what leadership actually values, okay? Not what they say in meetings. Now, why finding who's responsible makes you less safe? Why finding who's responsible makes you less safe? The natural response when something goes wrong in most organizations, all right, when trying to find who is responsible, the natural response is find who did it, punish them, and problem is solved. But this always fails. And it fails because of the following. Let's demonstrate with real example. Juice manufacturer in South Africa. Batch of juice released with incorrect pH. That could allow pathogen growth, definitely. And it was discovered after the shipment. Now, the investigation says, who released this batch? And the answer? Quality technician did. The guy in the third shift signed off on pH reading of 4.2. And the specification is buff 4 point is less is to be under 4.0, but he signed off on 4.2. The action, the technician get fired for gross negligence. Well, now let's see what the investigation really missed are the following. First, pH meter hadn't been calibrated in 6 weeks. This is a maintenance backlog, right? And then also, night shift supervisor position was vacant. There is no supervisor for the night shift for the cost cutting reasons. And the technician was working 12-hour shift for 6 days a week. That's his schedule because there is an understaffing. And the training on pH testing was a 15-minute video that is without any competence check or competence evaluation after the training. And technician had flagged, okay, he or she had flagged the meter as acting weird 2 weeks earlier, but nobody responds. He was ignored. And no verification steps also. Evidently, one person's reading was the final decision. The results of firing the technicians, subsequently what happened, remaining staff, they learned that from this lesson that don't report problems, you will get blamed. And also, underlying system failure remained there, no fixes. And same failure happened 8 months later with different person and also got fired. Well, let's look at the better approach here with systems investigation, not personal investigation. You remember we learned the system design in previous modules? Let's see the system investigation. Same scenario, but different company. But now the question is toward the system investigation. This is how they start their investigation. This batch was released incorrectly. All right? Let's understand how our system allowed this to happen. Let's understand how our system allowed this to happen? An investigation found the following. First, calibration schedule wasn't being followed. Well, why? No redundancy in critical measurement. That's a design flaw. And staffing level created fatigue. Resources issues. The guy is working 12 hours for 6 days. And training was inadequate. 15 minutes without evaluation, competency evaluation. That's a system gap. And also, the investigation found that previous concerns weren't addressed. The technician reported but no response. There's a communication breakdown. Now, the actions taken here after this system investigation are the following. They implemented automatic calibration alerts and requires two-person verification for critical limits and hired additional shift coverage and redesigned training with competency assessment and created anonymous reporting system for equipment issues so nobody get blamed. Now, the technician's role here, what happened to this technician here? He was retrained, not fired, and they became part of the solution. He helped redesign the verification process because they understood where it broke down. They got rewarded, not blamed. The principle here, blame finds person, but system thinking finds the failure. All right? We have a whole module of system thinking and how to design system thinking. When you punish individuals, you get the following. You get fear of reporting from the other employees and hidden problems. Nobody report to you anything, and you get repeated failure. All right. But when you fix the system, you get the following. You get transparency. People are open to discuss with you because you fix problems. And you have continuous improvement because everything is reported and fixed. And you have actual safety there. The question for your organization now is the following. Last time something went wrong, what was your first question? If your first question was who did it, or was your first question was how did our system allow this to happen? The first question evidently determines whether you get safe or just quieter. Whether you get safer, your system becomes safer and safer, or become quieter and quieter. All right. The control that determines if you see problems before they become crisis. Let's look at that. You have psychological safety. It's not about feelings, okay? It is about information flow. Let's explore two different facilities that have same company, the same procedures, and different outcomes. All right? Facility A, no psychological safety. What happens here? Line worker notices temperature gauge fluctuating, doesn't report it, and says, maintenance will say I am being paranoid. Supervisor sees condensation in cold storage, doesn't mention it, and says, last person who reported that got yelled at for stopping production. Quality technician finds a borderline test results recorded as pass and says, if I flag this, I'll have to stay late and explain it. As a result, here in facility A, small problems become invisible until they become big problems. The actual incident happened. Refrigeration system had been failing intermittently for 3 weeks. Multiple people noticed. No one reported. System failed completely and cost $200,000 product loss. And then when the post-incident investigation conducted and start with the question, why didn't anyone say anything? Then they went interviewing everybody. They want to know why is spoken, why nobody approached it. They found the following answers. I didn't think it was my place, was one of the answers. I mentioned it once and got told to focus on my job, was another answer. I didn't want to be the person who stopped production, was another answer also, because of the system. Okay? The blame, the culture. That's what happened. Now let's look at facility B, strong psychological safety. What happens here? Line worker notices temperature gauge fluctuation, reports it immediately, and maintenance checked it same day and finds sensor drift. And the maintenance replaced the sensor and thanks the operator, the worker. Thank you for reporting the problem before it become bigger. Also, supervisor sees condensation. Mention it on a daily hurdle. He went ahead and mentioned that in a daily huddle. The team investigates immediately and finds door seal issue. And then the team fix it before it causes problem and thanks the supervisor. Appreciate for reporting the near miss. And quality technician finds borderline results, flagged it, and the team went ahead and reviewed and discovered supplier process has changed. They catch it before it affect products. And the technician was appreciated. The results here, small problems get fixed before they become big problems, before they cause crisis. Now, this is how to build psychological safety with these practical steps. Step one, separate reporting from blame. All right? The bad example is when you receive the reporting and you say, who let this happen? Who let this happen? That's bad. Okay? Instead, you thanks the person for catching the problem. Thank you for catching this. And let's understand how it happened. Let's learn. All right? Step two, reward early reporting also. You got to reward the early reporting. So when someone reports a small problem, thank them publicly. Show what you did about it. Show it and explain what would have happened if they didn't report it. The consequences. Explain that. Show the value. Show the appreciation. Thirdly, track near misses as a positive metrics. Okay? Don't measure the number of incidences that encourages hiding. Instead, do measure number of near misses caught and resolved. And this will encourage reporting. Step 4, leadership response tests. When someone brings you bad news, Your first response determines everything. You have the following responses. First, why didn't you catch this earlier? That's a bad response. That's a blame response. Secondly, when you say, this is going to cost us money, that's not a good response also. And when you say, who is responsible for this? That's not a good response at all. The better response are, thank you for telling me. What do you need to fix this? And what can we learn from this together? Listen, learn, recommend it, and share. Let's demonstrate with a real example in meat processor in Canada. Meat processor implemented good catch program. Any employee who reports potential food safety issue get the following: get immediate acknowledgement from the supervisor and get written thank you from quality manager and got monthly recognition in company meeting, and also they get no negative consequences even if it turned out to be nothing. As a result, near misses reporting increased 300% in the first year, and actual incidents decreased by 60%. Why this happened? The problems were being caught and fixed at the small stages. Now, the following is a test for your organization. Ask your frontliner worker anonymously, okay? Ask your frontliner workers anonymously the following question. If you saw something that might be a food safety problem, but you weren't sure, would you report it? If the answer is anything other than yes immediately, you have a governance problem. Because the problem you don't hear about are the ones that become recalls. Note this down. The problems you don't hear about are the ones that become recalls. The liability you cannot transfer. Let's look at that. Those are the liability you cannot transfer. But here the common belief. The common belief is we outsource production to a co-packer. They are responsible for food safety. We just provide the receipt or the recipe. All right. This is a common belief that we outsource production to a co-packer. They are responsible for food safety, and we just provide the recipe. Well, the legal reality is the following to that belief. When there is a recall, when there is an outbreak, and when there is a regulatory action, your name is on the label and you own the consequence 100%. To demonstrate that with real world example, in nut butter brand in USA, a small company, great recipe, no manufacturing facility, hired a co-packer to produce. Co-packer produced for 40 plus other brands. It's a professional facility, a certified facility, this co-packer. Okay. Now, what happened? Co-packer had salmonella contamination in their facility and affected multiple brands, including this one we are talking about. And then the recall happened. 15,000 units recall. And the cost to the brand, $400,000 direct recall costs. And lost distributions, the retailer now dropped them like immediately. And brand reputation got destroyed and company went bankrupt within 18 months. And what's the cost of the core Parker? Insurance covered most of it and is still in business and is still producing for other brands. Now, who owns the consequences here? The brand on the label. That's on the consequences, 100%. Is the legal reality. Okay? Now, what outsourcing actually means? You can outsource the following. Okay? You can outsource the following. You can outsource the physical work of production. You can outsource equipment investment. You can outsource facility management. You can outsource day to day operations. However, you cannot outsource the following. You cannot outsource legal liability. You cannot outsource regulatory responsibility. You cannot outsource customer trust. And you cannot outsource brand reputation. And you cannot outsource financial consequence of failure. You cannot. So, how to maintain governance when outsourcing? Through the following. This is how to maintain governance when outsourcing. First, contract must be the contract must specify control. And it should not be like co-worker will follow the GMP. No. It should be, or it must be, co-packer will follow our HACCP plan. Any deviation from critical limits requires our written approval before products ship. Secondly, you must have visibility. You must have access to their monitoring records on real time and not just quarterly. You must have right to audit without notice. You must have immediate notification of any deviation, and you must have access to their supplier approval process. Thirdly, you must verify. Don't just trust their certificate of analysis, COA. No, you must conduct your own incoming testing and audit their facility quarterly in the minimum and review their deviation logs and test finished product independently. Also, you must maintain expertise. Even if you don't manufacture, you need someone who understands the process. You need someone who can audit efficiently and effectively, and you need someone who can interpret their data, and you need someone who can make technical decisions. You must maintain expertise. Let's demonstrate with real world example the spice company in Netherlands. This spice company outsourced production to facility in India, maintaining a strong governance as following. They had their own food safety manager who visits the facility in India quarterly from Netherlands to India, and they required daily photos of the production and tested every batch independently before accepting and had contract clause that says any deviation is equivalent to batch being rejected, no payment at all. Now, let's look at the incident with this uh, governance. The co-packer had moisture control issues that would have caused more growth, of course. And the co-packer's response, it is probably fine. We can ship it. Well, the brand's response and says, we reject it. No payment. Fix your process before next batch. Okay? The results? The problem got fixed. No contaminated products reach market, and brand protected. The cost here, one delay shipment versus potential recall if that was accepted. Now, this same apply to the following. It apply to distributors because with distributors, you own temperature abuse in their trucks. If temperature abuse happen there, you own it, your brand own it, and you own the consequences. And also it applies to warehouses because you own pest control in their facilities also. If your product get infested, you get to answer to the legal and also to the customer. So the same rule applies to the warehouses, and the same applies to the suppliers. You own contamination in their ingredients. Any contaminated ingredients, you will be accountable. So the same rules apply to the suppliers, and the same applies to retailers. You own mishandling in their stores also. So the retailers also have to handle your product safely and properly. It's harder to control though, but it's still it's your reputation. Now, these are the action steps to do that. First, list everything you outsource, whether it's production or storage or distribution or testing. List them down. Then, secondly, for each listed, ask the following. Do we have contractual control here? If not, you must have that. Secondly, ask, do you have visibility into their operations? If not, that must be have also. You should have that, and you must have that. Thirdly, ask, do we verify their performance? If not, you must have it. Fourth, do we have expertise to evaluate their work? If not, you must have. And thirdly, if any answer is no, you have a governance gap there and you can close it. All right? And also remember, the consumer doesn't care who made the mistake. They care whose name is on the package, and that is you, your brand. Okay? Let's conduct the leader tests. Does safety survive without them? The warning sign here, those are the warning sign, okay? If you hear something like, our food safety is great because, for example, Maria really knows her stuff. She has been here for 15 years and knows everything. That's a warning sign, okay? We are conducting a leader test here. The translation to that is your food safety system is Maria, not your processes, not your structure. Your food safety system is Maria. Okay? If your answer is our food safety is great because Maria really knows her stuff and she's been here for 15 years and knows everything, then she is your food safety system, not your processes. And what happens when Maria retires or get promoted or leaves for another job? What happened there? Let's demonstrate with a real example. In cheese manufacturing in Italy, food safety manager, 18 years, he has been 18 years with the company, with deep expertise and excellent relationships and strong performance, and everyone trusted him. All right? Now, he retired. 18 years with the company, deep expertise, excellent relationship, a strong performance, and everyone trusts him. He retired now. Well, the replacement was hired is a qualified person with good credentials. And within 6 months, the following happened during after that food safety manager of 18 years retired. Now, in 6 months, the following happened. 2 batches released with failed CCP. Now, previous manager would have caught them, but now 2 batches released with failed CCPs. Also, supplier approval process broke down. Now, previous manager knew which supplier were reliable. And also, staff started taking shortcuts. Well, previous managers' personal authority kept them accountable. And also, audit found 12 non-conformances, which previous manager knew exactly what auditors were looking for. Now, what failed here? The system was never actually documented. It existed in one person's head, the guy with the 18 years experience who left. Now, the difference, that is a person dependent system. And in person dependent system, you have the following. You will hear like, ask so and so, he knows, or Maria handles that, or check with the manager, they will tell you what to do, or critical knowledge exists in people's memories, all right? And decisions based on experience and relationships. And when the person leaves, the knowledge leaves also. But in system dependence, you have the following. You have documented procedures that anyone trained can follow. And you have clear decision criteria, not just judgment call, but the criteria of why this decision is made. And also, you have defined authorities, not personal relationships. And in system dependent, also, you have knowledge is captured in the system, not in the heads, documented. And you have in system dependent, new people can step in and the system continues. And when persons leave, the system also remains. So how to test your system? Through the following. Let's run a hit by a bus test here. It's morbid, but it's effective. Now, if your food safety manager was suddenly unavailable tomorrow, but someone else approved suppliers, that means, do you have documented supplier approval criteria? Or does current manager just know who is good? Secondly, could someone else make whole or release decisions? That means, do you have clear decision trees? Or does it depend on manager's judgment? Thirdly, could someone else's handle a customer complaint? Which means, is the investigation process documented? Or does manager handle their way? Fourth, could someone else prepare for an audit? Which means, is everything documented and accessible? Or does manager know where everything is? If any answer is no, or probably not, you have person dependent system. So how to build system continuity? First, document the invisible knowledge, meaning not just procedures. You need to document why decisions are made. You document the criteria and not just rules. And also document how to handle gray areas. And also you document what to do when things go wrong. And also make sure to document who to contact and when. Secondly, create redundancy. Means cross-train multiple people on critical functions, have backup approvers for key decisions, and rotate responsibility so knowledge is spread. Thirdly, test the system regularly. Means have someone else run the process and see where they get stuck. And those stuck points are equivalent to undocumented knowledge. You can proceed and document that. Fourth step, separate personal authority from the system authority. Means here the bad example would be to hear like people follow food safety rules because they respect the manager. But what you need is people follow food safety rules because the system make it clear and consequences are consistent. All right. Let's demonstrate with real world example with beverage company in Mexico. Knew their QA director would retire. This company, the beverage company in Mexico, knew their QA director would retire in 2 years. So they started the preparation. All right. In the first year, the director documented every decision making process and created decision trees for common scenarios and recorded video training on how I think through problems and identified all the unwritten rules and wrote them down. In year two, hired replacement early to work alongside the director for 12 months. And director deliberately stepped back and let replacement make decisions and tested the documented systems and fixed gaps they discovered. The results here, when director retired, transition was seamless, performance didn't stop, and new person had everything they needed. Principle here is strong leaders build systems that don't need them. Weak leaders make themselves indispensable. So ask yourself, are you building a system or are you the system? If your organization would struggle without you, that's not job security, it is a governance failure. Now, before you leave this session, don't answer quickly, just really think about this. Who truly owns food safety in your organization? Note that down, take it away with you. It's not who is supposed to own it, it's not what the organization chart says, and it's not what the policy claims. Who actually has the authority to stop production when safety is at risk, to, to say no to shipping questionable products, to reject a supplier without business approval, to spend money to fix a safety issue, and to make decisions that stick even when they cost money. Write down the name. Now ask yourself, if that person left tomorrow or was overruled by operations or faced pressure to compromise or had to choose between their job and food safety decisions, would your system still protect the consumer? There are three types of organizations. First type is the organization with no governance. The food safety is whoever has the most authority in the moment and change based on who is in the room and how much money is at stake. That's the first type, the organization with no governance for food safety. The second type of organization is the one with person dependent governance. The food safety works because of one strong person. And when they leave, the system collapses because that person was the system. Third type is system governance. Food safety is embedded in structure, authority, resources, and culture. Works. This system works regardless of who is in the room. So which one are you? The no governance, one person dependence type of governance or system governance? Now, what you do next matters. This week, first, have an honest conversation with your leadership team about the questions in this module and identify one governance gap in your organizations and commit to fix it. This one, this week, fix that. And this month, review your organizational structure and ask, does food safety have real authority? Then check your budget. Does it match your stated priorities? That safety is our number one priority. Thirdly, test psychological safety. Ask people reporting problems or hiding them. Are they hiding or reporting the problem? Check. Run the test. All right. But this year, build systems that survive leadership change and create clear decision-making authority and measure governance, not just compliance. All right? And remember, governance isn't about having the right documents. It is about what happened at 3:47 a.m. when the phone rings and someone has to make a decision that costs money. In that moment, does food safety has authority or does it have to ask permission? Your answer to that question determines whether you have governance or just paperwork. You came here to learn. You are leaving with a choice. Go back and maintain the illusion that everything is fine, or go back and build real governance that protects people. The choice is yours, but remember also, the next crisis won't wait for you to be ready. This is the transition to the next module. Governance gives you authority and information give you visibility. You now understand that you should have authority to make food safety decisions, how to structure governance so it survives pressure, and why psychological safety determines what you see, and where governance typically breaks down, and how to test if your governance is real. But here's the problem. You can have perfect governance structure and still fail if you don't have the right information at the right time. Example, your quality manager has full authority to stop production. That's a perfect governance structure there. But they are in a meeting when a CCP failure happened on the line. By the time they find out, the product has been packed and shipped. Well, governance without information is equivalent to authority without visibility. So the questions, Module 3 answers are the following. When something goes wrong, how quickly do you know? How do you know what's affected? Can you find it before it reaches consumers? Can you prove that happened? And when you need to make decisions, do you have the information you need? Is it accurate and timely? Can you trace cause and effects? Can you demonstrate control? And when regulators or customers ask, can you show them exactly what happened? Can you prove what you did about it? And can you demonstrate your system works? Module 7, build the authority. All right. So those are the questions that Module 8 will answer. All of them. Module 7, build the authority, the structure, but Module 8, build the information system that make authority effective. And because the best governance in the world is useless if you cannot see what's happening. The next, you will have traceability and information flow. All right. How to build systems that tell you what you need to know when you need to know. That's what we'll learn in the next module. How to build systems that tell you what you need to know and when you need to know it. Thank you and see you in module 8. Bye.